So the Legion pre-patch has been out for about a week, and Blizzard has severely revamped every single class. In this video I'm going to talk a bit about the Hunters, how they've been changed. I'm also going to go in depth into each spec. I'm going to talk about which spec I find the best, but I'm also going to talk about the rotations for each of the specs in case you do want to try one over the other. So as far as spells that all three of the Hunter specs have goes, the biggest ones that have been changed are Aspect of the Cheetah. Now is essentially a sprint. You run 90% speed for 3 seconds, and then that diminishes to 30% speed for 9 seconds. Exhilarate, every Hunter class now has Exhilarate, you don't spec into it. Or every Hunter spec, I mean. And Aspect of the Turtle now replaces Deterrence, which the main difference is that Aspect of the Turtle only has 1 charge, where Deterrence had 2, and Aspect of the Turtle lasts 8 seconds, where each charge of Deterrence lasted 5 seconds. Also on top of that, Survival is the only Hunter spec that uses traps. I'll talk a bit about that once I talk about Survival, but now I'm going to talk about each of the specs individually. I will go from what I find to be the worst spec to the best spec as far as DPS is concerned. So let's get started with Marksman. Now my item level is 730, so all of the DPS tests I did are at that level, so your DPS for all these specs might be less. Now, I've done multiple DPS with every Hunter spec, and I find that Marksman is, well, first off, it's the least fun for me to play out of the 3, but on top of that, it does, for me at least, do the least amount of DPS. The main cooldown you'll be looking at is True Shot Aura. That's the main cooldown that Marksman has, and then you'll also have another cooldown if you do spec into it. As far as talents are concerned, you do want to go with Lone Wolf. It increases your damage done by 18%, but you cannot use Call Pet. And then the second tier for level 30s is Lock and Load, Black Arrow, True Aim. A lot of people are going to disagree with me here and say that Lock and Load is the best. I did try Lock and Load a lot, and then I switched to Black Arrow, and I found that Black Arrow did a bit more DPS for me, and that's essentially just because Lock and Load didn't proc for me enough. I mean, it's only 8%, so you only have an 8% chance for you to get 2 free aim shots. If that does proc for you, that's very good. 2 free aim shots is always nice. The dot that Black Arrow does was very good when I was looking at it, but if you do prefer Lock and Load over that, that is a viable choice. True Aim on the other end, not so good. The third tier for level 45s was Post Haste, Far Strider, Dash. This tier doesn't really matter at all. It's mainly utility based. I did pick Far Strider, which has a 10% chance every time you crit to reset the cooldown and disengage. Post Haste is the same as before, frees you from all movement impairing effects, and every time you disengage, your speed's increased by 60% for 8 seconds, and then Dash kind of buffs Aspect of the Cheetah a bit. Also, one thing I forgot to mention before is that aspects aren't really a thing. Hunters do get all new aspects. Aspect of the Cheetah was very much revamped, which I talked about earlier. But Dash increases the duration of Aspect of the Cheetah by 3 seconds. For the level 60 tier, you definitely want Patient Aim. The other two, Sentinel and Explosive Shot, are not very viable. Patient Aim increases your max focus by 30, and then it causes invulnerable targets or targets that have the invulnerable debuff on them, Mark Shot and Aim Shot do 150% more damage towards them. Then 75 tier, doesn't matter so much. That's pretty utility based. You can pick a Binding Shot, Wyvern Sustain, Camouflage. I do like Camouflage. I did pick Binding Shot just because the AoE stun is very good as far as Marksman is concerned for me. Level 90 tier, however, I feel like a lot of people disagree with me here. I was never a fan of Barrage, even when it came out in Mists of Pandaria, even when they buffed it coming in Warlords. I was never a big fan of it. I've always liked Murder of Crows. The main reason I never liked Barrage was that it just costed too much focus and it messed too much with focus regen. Plus I did do DPS tests with both Barrage and Murder of Crows. I got higher numbers with Crows. If you do prefer Barrage, feel free to use that. It's not a horrible spell by any means, but Volley, it's not very viable. I mean, Volley is only good for AoE targets, and in this guide I'm really telling you like boss DPS essentially, like in rating. And then 100, definitely Sidewinders. Now Sidewinders does replace Arcane Shot, and Arcane Shot, it was changed a lot in this expansion because it does less damage now, but it doesn't cost any focus. It instead generates 5 focus. Sidewinders has about a 10-second cooldown, though the cooldown is actually reset based on your haste. Some moves are like that now, but Sidewinders also generates 50 focus for you. Now the stat priority for Marksman was completely changed. It's like completely backwards from what it was in Warlords of Draenor. Now Mastery is your best, and then Haste, and then Versatility, and then Crit is your last. Because the Mastery before, if you just stood still, you did a lot more damage. This, the damage is actually increased more, and you don't have to stand still for it anymore. It just a sheer, like, increases your damage, increases your crit, I believe it does. Yeah, all focus spending abilities have their damage increased based on your mastery. Plus your range is also increased, which is similar to what it was last patch. Now for the rotation, as I said before, True Shot Aura is your main cooldown. You're going to use that to your discretion. Same thing with Murder Crows. So Murder Crows is only a 1-minute cooldown, so you could just use that whenever it comes up for a boss. It's also very good to use in trash pools just because it's only a 1-minute cooldown, and if the target that has Murder of Crows on them dies, your Murder of Crows' cooldown is reset. And then any trinkets you have. I do have the Blade Master trinket, which is very good. That is also very good for bosses or ads or whatever. And then the main rotation, you're going to start out with your dot first, like always. That's usually for all classes. So you use Black Arrow first, and then Aim Shot is going to be your focus dump. And then when you run out of focus, you can use Sidewinders to regenerate that focus, and then use Mark Shot whenever it procs. Your auto shots have a chance to make your next Sidewinders give their target Hunter's Mark, and then Hunter's Mark allows you to use Marked Shot. Now, just one thing to note, probably should have said this towards the beginning, but if you are testing your DPS and target dummies, try to position yourself like I am, so then you're only attacking the main damaged target dummy, not the other one, because Mark Shot does attack 2 targets at a time, and if you're using Mark Shot to attack both targets, it will skew your DPS a lot, and this guide is mainly for boss DPS, so single target essentially. But yeah, you also have Bursting Shot, which you're not really going to use in PvE combat. It's mainly a PvP thing. It's kind of, if any of you guys remember Scatter Shot from a long time ago where hunters had that, it's kind of like that, but it does do a little bit of damage. Also, one thing to note is that since you're using Lone Wolf, Exhilaration is buffed a bit to heal you for 50% of your health instead of the 30% before. Also, whenever you kill a target, it reduces the cooldown of your Exhilaration by 30%, so it does have a bit of survivability to it, but overall DPS isn't so good for Marksman. Now, after doing that whole rotation for Marksman, I got an average DPS of 47.8k, and that's no buffs at all or anything like that. So I also didn't use my ring. I don't want to use anything like that to kind of fluctuate my DPS. Obviously, don't use your call to arms thing. That won't help you at all in raids. But yeah, I didn't use my ring, or I didn't have any buffs up. So let's move to the next spec, which is Survival. Now Survival, as many of you know, has been changed the most because now it's a melee spec for hunters, and it's actually pretty fun to play, honestly. It's the one that has all the buttons to it. Marksman and Beastmaster don't have so many buttons, but Survival does have a lot of buttons to it, and it's to me it's kind of the hardest one to play. Not that that's a bad thing, essentially. It does, I feel like, take the most skill to play, because it involves a lot of looking at your buffs, making sure if you have this buff, then use this ability. If your opponent has this debuff, then use this ability, and so forth. Now, the main cooldown for you here is Aspect of the Eagle, which increases your crit chance by 10%, and you have a 100% chance to gain Manga Spike stacks, which Manga Spike is going to be your main damaging ability in this spec. Now with Survival, the pet you want to use is that it doesn't really matter at all. You just can't use exotic pets because that's only for Beastmaster, because pets do not give buffs anymore. So you can really just pick any pet that you think looks cool or whatever. They all do the same damage. So for talents, the first tier I like to use Way of the Mock Nathal, which increases your attack power every time you use Raptor Strike by 3% for 8 seconds, and that stacks up 4 times. By the way, just to let everyone know, is that I tried so many combinations on all of these specs for each, or all of these talents for each spec, and the talents that I'm telling you I found were the best DPS for me. You can try other ones if you want, and then you can let me know in the comments below if they're better. But continuing on, the level 30 talent, a lot of people like Snake Hunter. I did use Snake Hunter for a bit, but then I switched over to Murder of Crows, which, as I said before, I've really always liked Murder of Crows, and I did get a bit more DPS using Crows. The 45 talent tree, same as every spec. You can do Post Haste, Force Rider, Dash. Level 60 tree, Steel Trap, Caltrops are not very good. Improved Trap is very good, and it buffs your Explosive Trap a bit, which is going to be used in your rotation. Then you have your next talent tier, which is Sticky Bomb, Ranger's Nest, Camouflage. This one's a bit utility if you want. Sticky Bomb knocks enemies back. Ranger's Nest kind of just locks enemies in place, and then Camouflage does pretty much the same thing as it did before, though Camouflage is actually buffed, where last expansion, if you stood still with Camouflage, you weren't able to be seen, and if you moved, you could be seen, but targets couldn't really attack you unless they were in melee range. Now if you're moving, targets will not be able to see you, and you don't move any slower, which is nice. Camouflage also has the heal cooked into it, which is what Improved Camouflage did last expansion. Then we have Dragon's Fire Grenade. I found was a lot better than the other two. Butchery is really only good for AoE. I did try Serpent Sting, but I found Dragon's Fire Grenade was the best for me. And then for the last tier, Expert Trapper was better than Spitting Cobra and Aspect of the Beast. Expert Trapper really makes your Explosive Trap more viable. It also buffs your Explosive Trap to be good against single target things. So that's why I used that. Also, I should probably talk about the stat priority. Now, versatility is actually very good for you, which is strange, because I feel like they did buff versatility a bit because they took out multi-strike. They did buff versatility a bit because it's actually pretty good for all Hunter specs. But versatility is your best here, and then crit, haste, and then mastery is last. Now onto the rotation. You are going to start with, well actually let's look at the cooldowns for a second. You do have Aspect of the Eagle and Murder of Crows, and then maybe any trinket that you have. Use Crows to your discretion, like always. And then I wouldn't use Aspect of the Eagle on pool, and I'll say why in a second. So let's move over to the rotation, and then I'll talk about Aspect of the Eagle. You do want to start out with your two main dots, which is Explosive Trap and Dragon's Fire Grenade. Explosive Trap, as I said before, is good to use on single target though, still. It's obviously very good on AoE, but Expert Trapper and Improved Traps makes it viable to use on single target. So you use those two, and then you want to use Lacerate, which is a bleeding dot, but if you do have the Hunter, I think it's the 2-piece bonus, it means that your target will take 15% extra damage for 5 seconds after you use Lacerate. So that's very good to pair up with Mongoose Bite. Now Mongoose Bite is the main thing to look out for here. So the thing with Mongoose Bite, it's your main damaging ability that you're going to want to look out for. If you use Mongoose Bite, you gain a buff that lasts 12 seconds and it increases all Mongoose Bites after that by 50% for each Mongoose Bite you do in that 12-second period. So if you use Mongoose Bite once, you get a 12-second countdown buff that increases your next Mongoose Bite by 50%. Using it again increases your Mongoose Bite damage by 100%, and then that keeps going up until the 12 seconds counts down. Now, talking about Aspect of the Eagle again, is that since it increases your Mongoose Bite charges, your ability to gain them by 100%, you want to use one Mongoose Bite and then activate Hawk, or Eagle, sorry. So then you'll have a bunch of Mongoose Bites and you won't waste any charges. So you want to use one Mongoose Bite, and then you also want to be looking at your buff, your Mongoose Bite buff. You never want to use one charge of Mongoose Bite and then leave it alone. You always want to use it when it has 3 stacks, or if the buff is about to fall off and then 1 or 2 stacks comes up, then use it again, because that Mongoose Bite Fury thing stacks up 6 times, meaning that your final Mongoose Bite has a chance to do 300% extra damage, which is very good. Now, talking about the 2-piece bonus again for Lacerate, is that it increases their physical damage taken by 15%. That's also very good to pair with Mongoose Bite. So you do have a chance for Lacerate's cooldown to come up, and you can use that and then pair that with Mongoose Bite. So there will be times when you use all 3 Mongoose Bites, and then right before your 12-second buff wears off, another Mongoose Bite comes up, use it again, so then that goes up to 4 stacks, and then that might fall off. But you only want to spam that as long as you can keep up the Mongoose Fury buff. And then Flanking Strikes is a good damaging ability that has you attack and then your pet do a big attack also at the same time, but it is very focus costly. Now you do want to use that sort of like a focus dump, but you do also have Raptor Strike, which costs half as much focus as that, and is also another focus dump. I do like to use, if I have like no focus, I do like to use a couple of raptor strikes before I do a flanking strike, just to take advantage of the way of the Mach Nathal buff, since that increases your attack power by 3%, and that sucks up 4 times. I do like to do that, keep that buff up as much as possible, and then use flanking strikes, and also try to pair that buff up with Manga Spike, if all of that makes sense. It is a lot to take in. As I said before, survival is probably the most difficult spec of the 3 to play. It does take the most skill, but if you do figure out how to play it, it is very powerful DPS. For survival unbuffed, I got about 50k DPS using that rotation. Now, finally, I want to talk about Beastmaster, which I found was the best DPS for me. The main stat priority for it is haste, then versatility, then master, and then crit is going to be your last. And the main cooldown you have is going to be Aspect of the Wild, and you're going to use Bestial Wrath. Though Bestial Wrath's cooldown is 1.5 minutes, though that is shortened a lot. You have ways of shortening that, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then you also have a couple other cooldowns if you do spec into them. Now, Beastmaster, you do want to use an exotic pet. I like using Thok just because he looks cool, and exotic pets do have various abilities also, but you can now tame Thok from Siege of Orgrimmar. I made a video on, well, the main purpose of that video was to show how to get the Iron Juggernaut pet, but I also tamed Thok in that video if you want to watch that. But Thok's abilities are that he can consume other humanoid and beast corpses, which heal him for 20% health. It's similar to the undead racial, and he also has another one that decreases the healing that the target takes by 25%. So that's very good in PvP if you want to use that. Another pet that is very useful is pretty much any spirit beast. I have a spirit beast porcupine that I use, and because he has an ability to heal me, which is also very useful in PvP if you want to do that. So the talents to use with Beastmaster are Way of the Cobra, which increases your Cobra shot damage every time you have a pet or guardian summoned. Stomp, which is going to increase the damage of your Dire Beast every time you use Dire Beast, they'll run to the target location and then do a big AoE damage. The 45 tier, same as always, post haste, Far Strider, and dash, whichever one you want to pick. I did pick Far Strider. And then this next tier, I feel like some people might disagree with me with. Well, first of all, Blink Strike sucks. It's always sucked. It's never been good. Don't use Blink Strikes. For One with the Pack or Bestial Fury, a lot of hunters I see use Bestial Fury, which I did a bunch of DPS tests with that. I also did a bunch of DPS tests with One with the Pack, and I found higher DPS with One with the Pack, and I will explain why. Now, I will say I do not have the heroic Archimon Trinket, or Mythic for that matter. Bestial Fury might be better if you do have that, because that will pretty much allow you to have Bestial Wrath up 24/7 if you have that trinket. So I haven't been able to do any DPS tests with that, but why One with the Pack I feel is better is, first off, it allows you to summon more Dire Beasts, and that is better. For one, your Stomp is going to do more damage, because every time you use a Dire Beast, it runs in and does big AoE damage. For two, you're going to benefit more from Way of the Cobra, because your 4-piece bonus has a chance every time you use Dire Beast to summon an extra beast, which is a Felt Board to assist you, and that counts as a Guardian, and that also counts towards another 8% buff to Cobra Shot. 3, you're going to have more focus regen, because the more Dire Beasts you have out, the more focus you'll get. And then 4, one thing that Beastmaster has, which is very good, is every time you Dire Beast, your cooldown of Bestial Wrath is lowered by 15 seconds. So your cooldown of Bestial Wrath will be lower if you use One with the Pack than if you use Bestial Fury. And for me, all of that adds up to be higher DPS than the 15% extra damage that Bestial Fury gives you and your pet. And then the 75 tier is just utility based if you want to do Binding Shot, Wyvern Sting, or Intimidation. I like Binding Shot because it's a very good AoE stun. And then 90, once again, never really like Barrage. Volley isn't very good for boss damage or single target or anything, so I picked Murder of Crows. And then Stampede. Now Stampede is changed a lot in this expansion, and I'll explain with it. It's a bit tricky and finicky because of how it was changed, but I'll explain that in a minute once I start talking about the rotation. Now, I did try Killer Cobra and Aspect of the Beast, but I got more DPS using Stampede, even though it is a 3-minute cooldown. Now to the rotation, I do have a macro that pretty much uses my Stampede, my Bestial Wrath, my Murder of Crows, and my Aspect of the Wild all at once. So I usually pop that at the beginning of the fight. Now the thing with Stampede, which I want to get out of the way because of how it was changed, is that it no longer summons all of your pets, that all the 5 pets that you have summoned to attack the target. It now is kind of an AoE, is it sends a stampeding horde of beasts in a targeted direction in front of you towards wherever you wherever the target was that you use Stampede on. It does it towards them. So let's say, for example, if you use Stampede in one direction, the tank can actually move the boss out of Stampede, which you don't want to do. So make sure that the boss is fully set up before you use Stampede against it, because that could be a lot of DPS wasted. Also, Aspect of the Wild, I should explain what that does, because that is one of your main cooldowns, is it increases your focus regen. You get 10 focus per second and your pet for every 1 second, and it also increases your crit by 10% for 10 seconds. Now for your rotation is Beastmaster, Kill Command, and Dire Beast. Both have about a, well, Kill Command's around a 6-second cooldown, Dire Beast, sorry, is about a 10-second cooldown. Those are lowered based on your haste, which is why haste is good. Now the thing is, crit, even though crit is your last stat, it's also kind of viable. Like, it's not all that horrible for you. So let's say if you are another spec that uses crit and you want to try Beastmaster out, you can, because you have your auto attacks have a 35% chance with one with the pack to reset the cooldown of Dire Beast if your auto shot's crit. That's 20% if you use Bestial Fury. So Kill Command is going to be the one that you want to use on cooldown, and then you want to use Dire Beast. Dire Beast pretty much whenever you can. The only time you should not use Dire Beast is if your Bestial Wrath is on a sub 5 seconds cooldown. So if your Bestial Wrath is on 5 or 4 seconds and your Dire Beast is like a second off coming cooldown, wait for your Bestial Wrath to come off cooldown and then use Dire Beast, because Dire Beast reduces the cooldown of Bestial Wrath by 15 seconds, and you don't want to waste that because it's very good. So besides that, you do want to use Dire Beast whenever possible, because it helps out a lot. Increases your focus regen, Stomp helps with Dire Beast, does more damage, and then just the beasts all around do more damage. And then Cobra Shot is going to be your focus dump. It's a pretty good damaging ability. Plus it is pretty costly. It costs 40 focus. And by the way, your mastery also has been unchanged from last expansion. It does just increase the damage of your pets, though that does count your Dire Beast pets. Now overall, without any buffs or anything like that, I got about a 54.5k DPS on target dummies. But yeah guys, I mean, that's pretty much it. Sorry if this video is a bit long. Hopefully you're able to find out which Hunter spec you want to use now. I say try them all out, even Marksman, even though I got the lowest DPS with it. Definitely try out Survival. It's been changed immensely because now it's melee, and it's also very fun to play. Beastmaster, also very fun to play. That's completely based off you spamming your Dire Beast as much as possible, which is also fun just to, spawn a bunch of pets to attack your target. But yeah guys, if this guide did help you, you can leave in the comments below. You can leave a like on this video. Any changes that you see, like if you got higher DPS using one talent, let me know in the comments below. I would be interested, and I would also like to try that out. But thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.